Hi, this is StrategyCast, where smart marketers and bold business thinkers share the plays behind brand breakthroughs. I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications. For decades, marketers focused on reaching audiences. Today, the real challenge is rallying people around ideas. The brands creating the most impact aren't simply broadcasting messages, they're building communities, shaping culture, and creating movements people want to join. In this episode, we'll explore why that shift matters, how it changes the way organizations lead, and what businesses can learn from the forces that drive social and cultural change. You'll walk away with practical insights for building stronger customer loyalty, aligning teams around a shared purpose, and generating the kind of momentum that fuels long-term growth. My guest today is Scott Goodson, a pioneer of movement thinking. He has spent his career helping global brands harness cultural energy to drive growth, relevance, and transformation.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to the show, Scott.
Lori, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to be here too. I kind of feel like this very special person is in the room. So you've got this amazing background. You're not only an agency owner, but you've really created a movement, quite frankly, for brands globally on what they should be doing and thinking about when it comes to really impacting audiences. Before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your journey and what led you to this very unique niche that you own today.
Well, I, first of all, love Colorado, where I know you have your agency,
Yes.
and I'm an avid skier. I've skied many of your hills and mountains.
Well, we know that you're one of us, Scott, when you refer to it as a hill and not a mountain. So for us, it's like we're going to go up to the hills for the weekend. I love
Yeah.
it. What's your favorite slope?
I love uh, Vale was a really cool
Yeah,
hill.
yeah,
Beaver Creek. I mean, I've done all of them.
yeah.
All across. I had a blank there because I'm like a dad, and have a dad head freeze. All the
Yeah.
mountains and hills I've been to with my kids, and
That's so
um,
special.
but
Yeah,
I think I was a hardcore Vale guy, and then with the kids we became Beaver Creek
yeah,
aficionados.
yeah.
Um,
That's great.
yeah.
Well, wonderful. So I'm
Are
glad to
those
know that.
tourist hills? Is that where the tourists go? I guess so, right?
Well, it is. So, like, if you're a local, like
Yeah.
Winter Park, A Basin, are a little bit less touristy,
Yeah.
and that's typically where we would go as kids.
Okay.
We used to ditch school.
Ah,
So we're right outside of Boulder, and we used to ditch school and go up to Eldora for the day, and then be back home by the time my parents got home, and they had no idea what we'd been doing all day. But
how
yeah,
fun. I
I know
wish I
it
had
was
that
fun.
experience.
We didn't do it too often, but my brothers, definitely we would wrangle me out of class and we'd go up for the day. So nonetheless, we digress here.
Okay. So
Let's
your
get,
question, my
yeah,
journey, how did
yeah.
I get here? So I started my career in Sweden. I moved there in when I was a young guy and started my career. And I came up in the industry when it was fat, happy, and delusional
Mm.
about its importance. And no one would say it, of course, out loud. There was a lot of um, belief at the time that advertising was the end all. But I think what I could see from the perch of Stockholm was that it was dying. It
Mm.
just hadn't really fallen over. And there seemed to be a lot more um, interest in brands that were doing things and not just saying things.
Right.
And attention, it was very expensive. People were spending a lot of money on media, and every year it just seemed to be less and less effective.
Hmm.
And it just struck me that didn't really sound like a strategy, even though all these companies were, running around spending, investing more in this. It felt more like an addiction, to be honest, than a strategy.
Yeah.
So we built Strawberry Frog really as the opposite. And the name, which we created when we started in Amsterdam, was to represent a tiny, it actually exists, poisonous little red frog with blue legs. So it's like a rebel with jeans.
Ah,
Um, but it's also small, which you don't mess with, and really is all about agility and being able to move and shift based on where the winds are
yeah.
going, what the clients are looking for. And it was really, I guess, a metaphor for you don't have to be the biggest spender in the room. You just have to stand for something and move with culture.
Right. I love it. Small but mighty.
Small but mighty. And at the time, definitely we were heretics. Brands shouldn't buy attention. They should
Earn it.
crystallize cultural
Yeah.
ideas. Um, Turns out that wasn't a fad. It was the
It
future.
was the
It's kind of
movement.
where the world is.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
do you remember was it several situations that ultimately led to you knowing that it needed to be done differently? Or was there this iconic moment where you're like, okay, I'm done. We've got to change course.
So when I lived in Sweden, we started working with a very famous Swedish brand called IKEA and furniture company, which I'm sure you're familiar
Oh,
with.
yes, very much so.
And and in those days, we were really, I could say, pioneers of this thinking.
Mm.
There were obviously brands that were doing it unbeknownst to them. There was, the VW launch in the United States in the early 60s was really probably the first movement in the United States for a marketing brand where they came in and really conveyed really crystallized the frustration Americans felt about Detroit, about these huge cars that fell apart every year, that couldn't fit in the garage. And here was this quirky German car that told Americans to think small.
Right,
And it just connected, and millions of people started buying them. And then, IKEA kind of followed suit, excuse me, and really were the first to turn it into a strategy that really was a framework within which marketing was done over many years.
right,
And we started doing, we brought in a behavioral economist to help us understand how we could get consumers to buy more beautiful furniture and what were the values. We started this idea that furniture was less like your parents treated it like this huge investment that was passed on for 7 generations, and rather more like a really nice pair of jeans,
right.
like really like a piece of fashion
Hmm.
that you could use to change the feeling of your home.
Right.
Um, so it was like chuck out, grandma's Victorian dining table and bring in a modern piece of fashion.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thinking. Anyway, that really set the tone and really taught me that there was a new way happening.
Yeah.
And that, marketing was no longer about spending billions of dollars on 30-second commercials. It was really an idea that people would stand for and share with their friends, something
Right.
that they felt was important in their lives.
Why aren't more brands and quite frankly CMOs and agency leaders landing on the importance of a movement versus simple messaging?
Well, advertising pushes a message out to people. If you think about that, right?
Yeah.
What a traditional brief is, client comes in, writes a brief, hey, we need you to I don't know. If the brief is really bad, it'll be like, we want to make a lot of money, come
Yeah.
up with something. If it's really good, they may have some, you know, here's the people we want to attract. Here's how we think we're relevant. Here's a brand purpose that we stand for. Can you make something relevant? And then you come up with a creative piece of advertising and you put it in market, but you're pushing it out. A
Right.
movement pulls people in.
Mm,
The old model is about interrupting people when they're middle of a great TV show. You're buying attention, you're broadcasting, all that sort of stuff. A movement is the opposite. It's kind of like a tornado that never stops.
right.
It's built on shared belief. It's built on engagement of ideas constantly evolving, not about creative repetition.
Mm,
You know, it doesn't ask, what do we want to say to the consumer? It asks, what do we want people to do?
right. How do we
And
want them to feel? That belief system.
that belief systems, and also, you know, campaigns, when the media stops, they end. But
Right.
movements have perpetual momentum
Right.
and they can carry over and they can really, you know, if you think about an advertisement, it's a 30-second or a static image. Movements could be a LinkedIn post. It could be a
Mhm.
speech by the CEO. It could be something in social media. It could be an event,
Mhm.
a competition. It could be a thousand things on a thousand platforms. They all inspire action. They all inspire this idea of activeness versus just knowing a brand is
Right.
there.
I think if our listeners are thinking through the movements, certainly the two that you've mentioned, but there's Patagonia and even Tesla. Those are movements in the market, and many of them are thinking, okay, we're a B2B brand, high tech. It could be led by a physicist or a chemist or an engineer, and and they're thinking the only movements I know are CPG or consumer or retail. What advice do you have for anyone with any brand out there regarding the fact B2B, B2C, retail, CPG, a movement can take place?
You know, there's been a lot of talk recently that, and a lot of CEOs of companies have abandoned this idea of meaningful ideas, or some people call them purpose, or some people call them mission, because they feel like it's going to lead them to woke advertising, you know, standing for, I don't know, political issues.
Hmm.
And certainly some movements are like that. You know, Patagonia certainly has elements of that in some of their marketing, but not everything has to be like that. You can have great movements that are about an idea that millions and millions of people already care about.
Hmm.
A case in point was when we were hired by P&G to help them rethink their biggest brand called Pampers. And Pampers, you know, is a very famous poop catcher.
Yeah, I like
Incredibly,
it. Thank
incredibly well
God, thank
engineered,
God for Pampers.
right?
Yeah,
You know, and thank God for the engineers that could come up with that thing.
yeah.
But it wasn't until we said two words that summarized what all parents care about, that made the brand connect with culture in a much more meaningful way. And that those two words were baby development.
Mm,
We are in the service of baby development. When we make a diaper that's 2 times thinner, we help babies and young children with mobility. And if they're stimulated and they can move, their brains are stimulated and they develop faster and better. And when you go to their product innovators and you say, hey guys, the next product you innovate, you need to deliver on baby development. It
mhm.
gives them that red thread that they can use to come up with really great ideas, because innovators are kind of like marathon runners. Unless you
Right,
give them a finish line, they're just going to keep running.
right. They are.
They are.
Yeah.
So, as are many other departments in a company. So, you really need that red thread to pull everybody together. So baby development, I don't think you're going to have a lot of politicians standing up and complaining that that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the distinction I think that truly differentiates, you within not only the sea of sameness, but so many competitors in the space as well. What is the process that you went through specifically with Pampers, and maybe just highlight a few of the steps that really brought you to the point of that aha moment from a positioning standpoint?
So it goes back to my experience years ago with working with IKEA, and then we worked with Ericsson mobile phones and many other famous Scandinavian brands. And it was basically, we were playing with purpose even in those days. And, I've been doing this for many years now, and I've probably done 10,000
Wow.
purpose projects. And over the years, you learn what works, what doesn't, where to not step and
Hmm.
where you can step. And I think there are a lot of practitioners out there who hear the word purpose and think, oh, yeah, that's easy, I can do it, and
Hmm.
make mistakes. And I think it's like anything in life. If you do it a long time, many times, you learn where to make the best, where to focus. And the place you shouldn't step is thinking about purpose as a statement, something a brand has, a noun, a nice paragraph that you put a little framed poster behind the CEO, maybe in the annual report. And typically innocuous, not particularly interesting.
Right.
Um, Perhaps something that the C-suite, the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, the finance guy go like, yeah, that's a really good idea. But the minute it kind of goes down a couple layers, people are like, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
get it. How do I tell it to my wife? Like, what is that? What? And so I think, you know, a boring purpose is wrong. Uh,
Hmm.
but also, a purpose that going to promise, GE a few years ago had a purpose. They were going to bring 30,000 female engineers into the world.
Hmm.
Well, they never did, and it was a flop, and the company ended up falling apart. Not because of that purpose, but it's just an example of a poorly chosen purpose strategy. Purpose needs to be a catalyst, a rallying point
Hmm.
around culture, a reason for being. But, you know, I understand how some senior leaders find it difficult to write a genuinely differentiated purpose.
Right.
It's really hard. That's where a movement comes in, because a movement can activate that purpose and turn it into something much more meaningful. So, in the case of baby development, I think we had both a purpose that was truly unique and differentiated and relevant to the audience. And it had also an important, people are waiting for a purpose to be launched that they can criticize. But in the case of Pampers, it was a brand that was deeply enmeshed in baby development for many, many decades. So it had a reason to say it, and it was credible. And so then the idea of baby development that became a movement was easier. Some companies, it's harder. Like, for example, we started working with one of the largest banks in the country called SunTrust,
Hmm.
now Truist. But in those days, um, they had a purpose. Now, if I remember correctly, what it was. Um, because I know the new one now, uh, which is a good reason that I can't remember the old one, because the new one is really quite good. Um, what is the old one? It was, I can't remember. It was very long and quite complicated.
Right.
So we went into the bank and said, let's take a moment and do a couple things. First thing we want to ask is, what are we against?
Mm.
And I'm not talking about the competition. I'm talking about
Right.
what as an organization could we stand up and say what we're against? And we had just had come out of the big economic recession of the, early 2010s, 2012, 2014. People, if you remember in those days, people were still, a decade ago, were still feeling the impact of that economic downturn
Right.
in culture. People were still, in pain as a result of that. So we said that's a strong thing we want to be against. We want to be against all the things that people were feeling that were negative to do with that downturn.
Mhm.
And what are we for? Which is another important question. Because that's, if you think about what a movement is, it's taking a stand against something, but you also have to be for something. So we say we're for financial confidence. This is
Yeah.
a country that people are feeling a lack of confidence. We want to spread that word. So the movement idea was on up. Two simple
Mm.
words, on up, to help spread financial confidence.
Yeah.
And the result was we ended up generating 6 million participants in a movement created by a bank.
Wow. Which is very, very difficult. Back to something that we talked about early on is, seemingly there's some brands and product types that this works very well for. But the minute you said bank, I thought that's got
Yeah,
to be a difficult problem to solve.
right.
So it doesn't matter the product, the service. Ultimately, any brand could become a movement. But with that said, what are some difficult movements that you've been involved in that took, or some advice that you have for our listeners today on something that might be more difficult to actually incorporate into their company structure?
There is really no category or business that you can not create a movement
Mm,
with or
good.
for. Um, I'm gonna speak about how you create a movement in a minute, but just hold that thought.
Yeah.
But let's say for the sake that every company and every brand could certainly do that. And you could throw any category at me, and I probably have a case study
Yeah.
behind it. Pharmaceutical, business to business, consulting, services, you name it.
Right.
Um, we, I remember I walked into, there was one of the largest companies in India. It's called Mahindra. In the
Mhm.
United States, they're famous for two product areas. One is tractors. They're actually the world's largest tractor manufacturer. And if you have a farm, you're probably familiar with Mahindra tractors.
Very,
They
yeah.
also, they also have a very large technology division called Mahindra Tech, which
Mhm.
competes with Accenture and with Infosys and other large technology companies. They also are a big car manufacturer for many other countries in the world and so forth. Um, they are probably in 800 different categories.
Wow. I think
Huge
I bought
company.
a couple of their screwdrivers too.
I'm sure you probably
Yeah.
they do everything from like satellites to baby retail stores.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
everything in between.
Yeah.
So I remember, I met the CEO and he was like, and the owner of the company, and he was like, we've tried for so many years to try to tell a story about what we are, but we're so different
Yeah.
that we can't figure it out. And I said, well, you're asking the wrong question. You're asking, what can we say that defines us? How do we explain what we do?
Hmm.
That's not the question. The question is, what's an idea on the rise in culture that you can tie to this organization that's relevant to a baby retail store and tractor manufacturer, car manufacturer, satellite manufacturer, airplane manufacturer, whatever, boats, yachting manufacturer, they do everything.
Right.
And what we did was we did research in 10 countries and we found there was among the buying generation, which are, 20 something to, you know, early 60s, there was a desire to rise to a new place.
Mm.
Now, how they defined that was different depending on
Right.
where they lived. But this idea of rise was really powerful. So we said we're going to launch a movement called Rise.
Yeah.
We as an organization are all about helping our customers rise.
Yeah.
And that's important because nothing should hold you back. Something as simple as that. And then you've got the ingredients to tell a really relevant story for a really complex,
Yeah.
multi-disciplined or organization, multinational. So that's an example.
I think
Like
it's
I said, give me any category.
Yeah,
You know?
it's amazing. I mean, and that company has every category out there known to mankind,
Yeah.
and a single word that can create meaning, emotion, behavior, I think is pretty darn special. So, what is the best place for our listeners to start? I mean, we've convinced them in the first 15 minutes of this conversation that this is good for anyone to really build a movement into their strategy. How do they start?
I would say the first thing you do is stop looking at your brand and start looking at the world around you.
Uh,
That's really the first step.
yeah.
So you think about Pampers for a second, or actually, I'll give you another example. You probably heard of the Smart car by
Mhm.
Mercedes, like a
Yeah.
small two-seater, a zippy little two-seater car that kind of zips through traffic. You can park it sideways and all that kind of stuff. And, how do you launch a two-seater car in the world?
Hmm.
And we looked at the world and we saw there was a huge group. Because if we would have gone out and said, hey, here's a really cool small two-seater, you should buy it. First thing Americans are going to say is, um, that's really small and that's really dangerous. Like,
Right.
what happens if we get caught between a Ford 150 and and an 18 wheeler? What's going to
Yeah.
happen? Now, that car is actually very safe, but we said, let's look in the world, right? Not look at the car, but look at the world. And what we saw was there was a lot of people out there fed up with people that own McMansions,
Hmm.
14-bedroom homes and toasters for 17, hot dog buns, and just everything was Mc huge.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there that goes, I don't need a 14-bedroom house. I'm comfortable with a 4-bedroom house. And that we felt was where the culture was
Hmm.
and a genuinely interesting area for the brand to be.
Yeah.
So we crafted again a two-word movement called Against Dumb.
Oh my God.
Against Against
So,
Dumb was against dumb over consumption.
yeah.
And we're for smart
Yeah. I love
living.
that.
Very simple.
Yeah.
And everything flows from that.
Hmm. Well, and I think once you get to that point, it's really where that thinking changes from a strategic implementation standpoint as well. I mean,
Yeah.
so many ideas will come from that for years and years and years and years. I mean, it's that strong. And I think that's what happens when you don't have movement as a part of your strategy is that the campaign ends year by year by year. And this creates that tentacle, if you will, to own it for many, many years to come. Um, how do how do you align? How do you identify the cultural forces that align with the brand? I mean, I think the spot most people are going to go to is audience, but cultural force is so much different than defining that segmentation. You know what I mean?
So 100%. We worked with a really super smart leadership team of a federal credit union called FourLeaf. It used to be called Bethpage, which is a very old, very famous credit union that changed its name uh, about a year and a half ago. Excuse me. And we started talking to them and we said, if you look at the biggest credit unions in the country, they have an affinity group.
Mm.
Army, Navy, for example, makes sense. People that are either in the Army and Navy or have been in the Army and Navy or know someone in the Army and Navy or just like the Army and Navy,
Right.
they're customers. And it's a massive credit union on a national basis. You've probably seen their advertising. You know, even if you're not in the Army and Navy, you're like, I kind of think people that bank at Army and Navy Bank or credit union, eh, pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then you have the teachers credit union on a national basis, TIFF. People are
Mhm.
like, yeah, that makes sense. Teachers are smart. They put their money in a smart way. So we said we need to find an affinity group for this organization to grow. So we launched a national movement called Money Like a Woman.
Oh,
And the idea is basically that for hundreds of years, women have been treated like second class citizens in finance,
yeah.
but they actually are brilliant. Women, people complain, oh, women are risk adverse. No, women are risk aware. They're
Right.
the smartest financial people.
Mhm.
And mothers, if you ask the average dude, hey, what does your wife do? And most guys will say, oh, she's a great mom. And then they'll kind of add, and she's got a job, she does her job. And then sheepishly they'll say, and she's kind of the home CEO, CFO. She runs the home. She pays the bills,
Yeah.
she does the mortgage, she runs the house, which is probably true with 99% of all men in this country. And and
And
yet she feels unvalidated. She feels unheard. So we thought, why don't we create a movement that puts women on a pedestal, not just women, but men who agree with that and are
right.
proud of their wives and their daughters and their friends and make this a real thing. So we launched, and you can look it up, Money Like a Woman online. And this has completely transformed FourLeaf.
Yeah.
And the CEO, Linda, and her team are just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And just watch the space because we're going to be doing something near future that's going to be genuinely inspiring.
Ooh, I can't wait. And what you're defining here is the not so typical positioning strategy as well. If we're looking at strategic development in a rudimentary way, the movement thinking encapsulates so much more than just the positioning piece of it.
It encapsulates um, many different things, but I'll leave one simple result in your head, your mind.
Oh,
$3 billion of net new revenue.
yeah.
We worked so in New York State, in New York City, you're probably what I'm about to tell you is not going to be a shock,
Hmm.
but it is one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive, healthcare markets in the world. You have institutions that have been around forever. You have the Columbia University Medical Facility, famous, you know, Ivy League school. You've got NYU Langone. You've got New York Presbyterian, which was founded by King George in 1772, I think.
Right.
You have the most famous medical institutions. And along comes a new brand called Northwell,
Hmm.
run by an enigmatic leader and a team, now a new CEO who's brilliant.
Mhm.
And they came in to the market and they said something that startled everyone. They said, raise health.
Oh,
And the
oh,
movement was about inspiring everyone
right.
to overcome all the things that are wrong with the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And more importantly, to inspire you to take an active role in your own health. And today, Northwell is the number one brand. And every year we do an econometric study
Mhm.
on the value created by the marketing. And in 2025, it was $3 billion of net new revenue added to the organization.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that is the impact that we're talking about. And it's truly changing the mindset surrounding, how you create that distinction and that differentiation in something that is so much bigger than the brand itself. And that,
Yeah.
I mean, every example that you've used today is it's so much bigger than the brand itself, and that's how you ultimately create that affinity and that meaning and the stories, the storytelling that can really back it up every step of the
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is really key, which is the idea has to be already. And this is why I think movements are so powerful and, for centuries have moved billions of people, right? If
Yeah,
you think about what's the single like framework that has made or inspired people to do something for
yeah,
centuries,
yeah,
it's movements.
it is.
And, and I think the key thing with the movement is that it's tapping into this big feeling that's already out there. Examples that I gave you, raise health, the frustration that almost every American feels about the health system. Against dumb, this idea of how many times have people driven past something and kind of looked at their husband and wife and gone like, oh my goodness,
Yeah,
seriously? Or, these are all truths. These are
yeah,
what
they
people
are.
are already feeling. You're not making it up. It's like an ad where you've got to come up with an idea and kind of push it out there. You're basically crystallizing what millions of people are already thinking about.
Well, and I think your comment about truth is very, very important here, because you can't make this crap up.
No,
Yeah, and people are going to see through it right away if you do. If it does not have, the truth behind it, if it's not something that's not relatable, it's not going to work.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh, Scott. This has been such an amazing conversation today. I can't believe that our time is up. Okay, before we leave today, I want to ask you one more question, Scott. Looking ahead, what will the strongest movement-driven brands be doing 5 years from now that most companies still have not figured out today?
I think they're going to use, I call it AI powered movements
Mm,
that just accelerates everything that I've talked about now. And I think the ones that are most successful will be the ones that are really moving at the speed of culture because historically brands have really moved at the speed of the approval process.
right,
And that alone will separate the winners from the losers moving forward because what AI powered movements will do will accelerate. So ones that are using the old way will quickly be irrelevant.
right.
And the ones that are using the new way will actually be able to pull so many different levers in order to, make that movement relevant and constantly renew itself on an ongoing basis. So it'll be the difference between floundering or really, swimming. And, you know, they'll be able to scale on a mass that,
Right.
we can't even imagine today. Think about all the brands that are starting now, companies. I mean, I'm sure you have entrepreneurs listening. These new tools are going to help you scale faster, cheaper, but still in a more differentiated way than your competitors.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, whatever you do, whether you're an accountant, whether you're a plumber, whether you're making some newfangled, electrical machine or what have you, or selling a professional service. If you can tell your story in a differentiated way and in a
Right.
way that's highly relevant to a massive consumers fast and constantly do that and then personalize it so everybody gets their own personal message,
Mhm.
imagine how powerful that's going to be. And the laggards will be making ads and the leaders will be making AI powered movements.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I have to ask, had you had AI when you launched IKEA, what would you have incorporated at that moment in time that is different than what you had from the launch?
I think we would have used, um, well, a couple things. We did that in a particular region of Europe.
Mhm.
I think we would have been able to use AI to understand insights relevant on a much bigger scale. And it
Mhm.
would have ended up becoming, I think, a bigger um, international effort than it was. Because what we did was hugely successful, but
Right.
it was In those days, brand leaders only thought about, or company leaders only thought about the country, and the idea would get to the border, take a left, and then take a left and stay inside that one geographical area. The other is, we just did a global effort for Visa,
Mm.
the Visa card company, that are no longer a card company. They're actually, because, what's a credit card anymore?
Yeah.
Now that we have it on our phones. And they're basically trying to attract fintech entrepreneurs to their platform to build their fintech companies on their platforms. So we did a global personalized campaign to many thousand fintech entrepreneurs on a global basis. Every single one got a personalized message, and they
Wow.
were invited to go to a content engine that allowed them to create social media posts promoting their businesses, also at the same time talking about Visa and its platform.
It's amazing.
And that was the free media. We didn't spend any money in media. The media was the desire of all these fintech entrepreneurs to go to this content engine, produce content, and post it on LinkedIn.
That is
So,
so powerful.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
an innovative way of working
Yeah.
that we didn't have back in those days
Yeah.
with IKEA.
Well, I tell you, it really sparks incredible thinking. What an incredible conversation today, Scott. I've enjoyed
Thank
every
you.
minute of it. What is the best way for our audience to get in contact with you?
Either on LinkedIn or Strawberry Frog
Ah, that's
website,
great.
strawberryfrog.com, or on the ski hills in Colorado.
Yeah, those of which are very difficult to name, but if they've got those black little diamond pieces on it, you know to watch out for those, right?
I definitely I like those diamonds, to be
Yeah,
honest. But as my birthdays seem to be coming faster and faster, I start to be a little weary of the
yeah.
double blacks.
Yeah, I've always been happy with the blue. I'm fine right there. I tell you, such a pleasure today. At Avocet, we often talk about trust as the foundation of every successful brand relationship. Movements accelerate that trust by giving people something bigger to believe in and belong to. Thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori. What a pleasure. A lot of fun. Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.